Whenever you're ready to go.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. This is a regular meeting of Livingston's Planning Board, and notice of this meeting has been distributed in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you,
Mr.
Jackie. May you
Klein?
take the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Ratner?
Yes.
Mr. Reber? Mr. Diner?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis? Here. Ms. Gucci?
Here.
Ms. Bagoli?
Here.
Mrs. Santola is not present this evening. Ms. Wishnew? Here. Mr. Fernandez?
Here.
Thank you. We have our quorum. We also have our board attorney, Catherine Madre from the Planning Department, Rocco Marucci, Assistant Township Engineer, our traffic consultant, and our planner consultant.
Thank you. First, I just want to go through the general procedure for tonight's meeting. The applicant is represented by an attorney who will explain the application. The applicant's attorney will call one or more witnesses to give sworn testimony in support of the application. Members of the board may ask the witness questions, and when the attorney for the applicant has no more questions for a witness, interested parties in favor of or in opposition to the application may question the witness about that witness's testimony. When all the applicant's witnesses have testified, if there is any entity or group formally appearing as a party in support or in opposition to the application, that party may call witnesses. When all the witnesses of all parties have been heard, members of the public may give sworn statements for or against the application. So first, is there anyone wanting to make a formal appearance as a party, either in support of or in opposition to the application?
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is call that matter first, which is preliminary and final site plan with variances for 39 West Northfield Road, located in the B Central Business Zone, Block 4801, Lot 9. Application number 2023-20-PFSPV, 39 West Northfield Associates, LLC.
Thank you. So again, is there anyone wanting to make a formal appearance as a party, either in support or in opposition to the application?
Hi, I'm Melissa Cianci. I'm an attorney in opposition and representing the residents in the neighborhood.
Are you representing all the residents or a selected number of residents?
A selected number of residents.
Okay, so there may be other residents here that you're not representing that may want to speak then?
Yes.
Okay.
However, not everyone is even in the country at this time.
Okay, do you have a list of your clients?
We have a preliminary list.
Okay, if you can submit them at some point, that would
Yes.
be,
We'll do that.
that would be terrific.
Is there anything else? Melissa Cianci, C-I-A-N-C-I.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any individual residents that are here either in support of or in opposition to the application, you also will have an opportunity to question the witnesses and at the end make sworn statements as well. If you're an attorney representing a group, is there any other attorneys representing anybody? Okay. Thank you. It's all yours. Okay. Introduce yourself and
Will do,
enter your
Chairman.
appearance, please. Mr. Scala.
Terrific. Thank you very much. John Wichiscala on behalf of the applicant, 39 West Northfield Associates, LLC. It's great to see everyone tonight in person. It's my first time in the room since prior to Zoom meetings, so it's great to see everyone. My client is the owner of the subject property. It's located at 39 West Northfield Road, Livingston. The property is identified as Block 4801, Lot 9 on the Livingston tax map, and it's located entirely within the township's B Central Business Zoning District. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site. It's currently approved with a one-story, approximately 24,000 square foot commercial building. I believe it was originally Jack LaLanne. It later became a New York sports club facility, operated for a good number of years. New York Sports Club shuttered the business at this location back in August of 2020 during, I guess, really the peak of COVID. which impacted a lot of the health clubs and facilities. And this property has remained vacant for, I guess, about 3 years now. We are before you this evening seeking preliminary and final site plan approval to permit the redevelopment of the property. More particularly, we're proposing to demolish the existing building and to construct in its place a two-story, approximately 55,200 square foot medical office building, which will be occupied if approved by Summit Health. I'm sure you're all familiar with Summit Health. They do have other locations here in the township, including one at 75 East Northfield Road. As you're going to hear in more detail tonight through our witnesses, this proposed building will essentially just be purely doctors' offices. Unlike 74 East Northfield, this building is not proposed to have an urgent care component, which includes walk-up clientele. All of our patients are by appointment only with the different specialists that'll be operating there. As indicated, we are pretty much building this new structure within the footprint of the existing building. We are expanding the parking lot in a number of manners. With that, we are increasing landscaping around the buffer, around the perimeter, as well as installing fencing and so forth. And we're certainly cognizant of our residential neighbors and have tried to come up with a design that respects their properties and their concerns of adjoining a commercial zone district. By and large, this project does meet all of the zoning and bulk standards that are applicable in the central and the B zone district. And by that, I mean we comply with lot coverage, impervious coverage, setbacks. We've got a handful of variances. Most of them pertain to signage that's proposed, both building and freestanding signage. We do have some parking variance relief that's associated with it. We've got a parking setback to a residential property line. You'll hear more about that. It's actually an existing non-conforming condition that we're improving on. And we also have variance relief for parking space dimensions. We're happy to be before you this evening. I do have a total of 5 witnesses we'll be calling over the course of this hearing. And just to give everyone a foreshadowing of what to expect, our first witness this evening is going to be Brian Natale. He's Senior Vice President with Summit Health. And we're going to bring him up first to speak about operations, what you might expect or what you will expect if this project is approved, just in terms of the overall operations, number of employees, hours of operation, things of that nature. Mike Lanzafama will be testifying, both as a professional engineer and a professional planner. I'm actually going to be calling him twice. In the first instance, to go over civil engineering testimony. He will go over all aspects of the design of the building, the site, the parking, how we're dealing with stormwater management and drainage and things along those lines. He will essentially cover everything with the exception of lighting and landscaping. That's going to be covered by his colleague, Brian Conway, landscape architect. So Mr. Conway will go through those details. We have Harold Maltz, so he's our professional engineer. He's our traffic engineer. He prepared the traffic impact studies that have been submitted and amended over the course, since we made the initial submittal in this regard. And we also have Lance Blake, project architect, who will testify. And as I indicated, once all of that testimony is in, we'll be calling Mr. Lanzafama back in his capacity as professional planner to go through the variances and justifications and the like. So that being said, unless anybody has any questions of me, I'd like to just call my first witness up.
Yes,
Mr.
if you do that,
Natale.
that'd be terrific. Thank you.
All right, great.
Yeah. Okay, if the reporter can administer the oath, please. I do.
And Mr. Natale, can you please provide the board, just state your name and address for the record, if you would?
Sure. Brian Natale, last name Natale. Address 121 Shanlin Road, New Providence, New Jersey, 07974.
And Mr. Natal, thank you very much. Can you please provide the board just with a bit of background of what you do for Summit Health?
Sure.
Maybe a little bit about the company as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you guys an overview of the company, quick tour of it, and then just a little discussion about the project, and happy to answer any questions. So Brian Natal, Senior Vice President, Physical Asset Growth and Operations, responsible for all construction facility developments for the organization. Just some background on Summit Health. We have recently merged with Village MD, which is now our parent company. We currently operate about 900 locations throughout the United States, ranging from 2,000 square feet all the way up to 300,000 square feet. 3 of those locations are currently in Livingston. We have 75 East Northfield, 315 East Northfield, and 200 South Orange Avenue. This area has been identified as a strategic area where we would like to expand our services for the residents in the area for Livingston. Our sites at both 315 Northfield in particular and 75 East Northfield have been very successful. We've been here in the town for quite a long time, and basically they're busting at the seams. The buildings can't hold anymore. We can't expand services, and there is an identified demand for increased access to the local residents, the local area. And with that, we've put our sights on this location as a perfect opportunity to expand our services and continue to expand within the city of Livingston. This particular project is approximately 55,000 square feet. The other testimony tonight will give you the exact numbers. It's going to be a 2-story building with a small basement. In essence, this is going to be very close to what we do at 75 East Northfield, with the exception of this is really only going to be just doctor's offices. So at 75 East Northfield currently today, even though the building is the same size, we currently operate a walk-in urgent care, which operates 7 days a week. That's not by appointment. And we also have a full diagnostic imaging center there. This new facility will not have those services. This will ultimately really, for lack of a better way to put it, just be a really big doctor's office. That's all it's going to be. Your typical exam rooms, your typical doctor's offices. There's not going to be any real special advanced services. All of the services at this facility, at the new facility, will be by appointment only. There'll be no urgent care type services, no walking off the street. Everything is booked in advance. Just some of the services that are going to be proposed for this location, I just have them jotted down here. So we have cardiology, pulmonary, endocrinology, allergy, ENT, gastro, derm, nephrology, and a surgery department. And that surgery department is just strictly exam room type surgeries, not any anesthesia, no ORs, nothing like that. It's the pre-op type of service where before your surgery in a couple of months, you go see your doctor in the exam room, and he takes all your vitals and gets you all prepped up for ultimately when you do go for surgery at another facility of ours. So that's it really in a nutshell. Again, really just a big doctor's office at this location. As far as numbers go, we estimate that there'll be approximately 55 staff in total at this facility at a maximum. Again, this is an ebb and flow. That's probably the high water mark. You know, there's doctors that don't work every day. There's doctors that are in the OR at another facility. So, you know, if there's 3 doctors in a department, you know, 1 or 2 may only be working at any given time. But 55 in general, based on our numbers from 75 East Northfield, is what we estimate here. We estimate total volume of patients, approximately 200 patients a day. Bulk of that's going to be Monday through Friday during, you know, the normal operating hours, which will be, you know, 8 to 5 for the bulk. The operating hours for the actual facility will be Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. But, you know, as you get later in the evening, 75 East Northfield has the same similar type of hours. You know, the volumes after 4 p.m. significantly drop. We would love to have our doctors work until 8 p.m. every night, but we have not figured out a way to make that happen yet. So, you know, when 5 o'clock comes, the numbers and the volumes significantly drop, even though the facility is technically open till 8 p.m. Saturday, the facility would be open from 8 a.m. generally till 1 p.m. The volume on a Saturday is not going to be anywhere near what a normal weekday would be. We require all of our departments to work one weekend a month. So you may have one or two departments open, literally one or two doctors there working, maybe 20 patients throughout the day. It's just to be able to have Saturday access for patients to be able to get in on a weekend. Right now, on Sunday, there are no proposed hours for this facility, where 75 East Northfield does run 7 days a week because of the urgent care and the imaging. We won't have this service at this location. So Sunday, there are no proposed hours at this time. We would leave that open only because in the future, if we were to swap out and put a pediatrics department in here, we do run our pediatrics department 7 days a week to give access to patients and their parents, the parents to get the kids in for better access. But right now, that is not contemplated here, so no hours on Sunday at this facility.
If you did end up going with Sunday hours, would those be similar to the Saturday hours?
They would
8 a.m.
be.
to 1 p.m.?
That's correct, yeah. And again, the volumes would be, negligible, very, very minimal at the most. Just some other topics I know boards are usually interested in. Trash, right? So all the trash in our facility is going to go to a private compactor, which will be located in the parking lot. You'll see renderings, I believe, of that tonight. Private hauler that we are in control of. Our housekeeping department brings all the trash directly out to the refuse container, as well as the recycling. We would then set our frequency with our private trash hauler based on the volume. If it's once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it may be, based on what the needs are of the facility. Biohazard waste is handled by our certified biohazard vendor. It's a third-party vendor. No biohazard waste ever leaves the facility. It doesn't go out into a container in the parking lot. It all stays within a room that is designed at the facility for biohazard waste. It gets accumulated there, and then very similar, we set a schedule based on volume once we open, and we figure out, what the need is. Maybe once a week, might be twice a week, might be once every other week, But that's a certified medical waste hauler who comes in and goes directly to a room, takes the biomedical waste directly to their transport vehicles, which are licensed, and then takes the materials for incineration. So no biohazard waste ever leaves the facility unless it's under the direction of the third-party vendor. Deliveries, just one other thing before I get into deliveries. Shredding, so we do have document destruction services, your typical shredder bins that you would know in any corporate environment. Those get picked up as well. It's a small truck that comes, again, based on a frequency that we would set. Generally, for a facility like this at 75 East Northfield, which would be very similar, probably be twice a month where the truck will come in, collect all the shredder bins, dump everything into his truck, and off they go. As far as deliveries goes, once this site is open, there are no major deliveries. We operate everything on demand with all of our facilities now, regardless of their size. There's no tractor trailers, there's no major trucks coming to the facility. It's literally just all UPS, FedEx, United States Postal Service, Amazon is big for us now. Just any normal delivery truck that any other commercial tenant or quite frankly, resident would have in the area is similar to what we would have. So, again, pull up to our front, walk a box in, drop it off, and off they go. So no big trucks or anything of that nature. I think I've hit everything. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
What is your typical trash haul? Trash hauling, what are the typical hours or picking up trash?
It depends, quite frankly. We can set that. We can ask the trash hauler to come between a certain number of hours. There are locations where we back up to residential communities, and we ask them not to come before 8 a.m. So the answer is it's open. Because we control that with our haulers, we have that option to set. And I would expect here that we would probably tell them nothing before 8 a.m., similar to what we do at 75 East Northfield.
What is the function of the basement space?
So the basement space, I believe it's 6,800 square feet off the top of my head. The basement space will be primarily used for building mechanicals, sprinkler systems, electrical systems, the transformers, all the MEP design elements to make the building work. We're going through final design programming right now. We would like, if there's room left over, to try to put our lab and phlebotomy services down there, which is your blood draw stations where patients come in, get your blood drawn. They're in 5 minutes in and out. It's not ideal space for medical use. It's not ideal space to have exam rooms. There's no light. There's no, it's kind of a dungeon down there. So our hope, if there is room left over, we're going to try to squeeze our phlebotomy services down there just because it's a quick in and out. And while it's nice to have windows during a phlebotomy draw, it's better not to be there for a long expended period of time. So if that works, that's our plan. The other use would be, we were going to put the staff break room down there as well, because again, it's not ideal for, everyday medical use, just because of its nature.
Any other questions from the board?
You mentioned the hours are going to be, the facility may open for docs and staff to come in at around 7, and maybe open for patients around when?
So it would be open to patients at 7. Generally, all of our facilities and what we would refer to as kind of a hub, right, which is it's a larger location. The door would open at 7. Most of our services really get ramped up at 8:30 to 5. That's when most of the departments really operate. The 7 a.m. timeframe, quite frankly, is really for the phlebotomy, to get that open early so that the patients can come in and get their blood drawn for anybody that was fasting overnight. So from 7 to 8:30, it's kind of limited. 8:30 is really the true operating.
Do you know what was there before? What's there now?
Yeah, it's a former gym, sports
Right.
club.
And do you know the hours of that gym, what they were?
I do not know that.
I think there were like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, and they went till 10 o'clock at night. So I just wanted to, see a difference.
Excuse me, are the doctors that will move into this building there most of the time, or do they rotate around the chain of?
It depends, is the answer. Some of them will rotate, some of them will not. Some of them will actually be coming from 75 East Northfield, has a permanent home there, and moving to this home, so that they have room to grow, and then we would backfill services at 75 with smaller services. So the answer is, it will be a mix of some doctors that are ultimately assigned to this facility as their only home, but there will also be physicians that, operate here 2 days a week and then go to our Bridgewater facility 2 days a week. So that's the answer. It's a hybrid, both. You're welcome.
Anyone else?
The number of doctors and offices in this facility compared to the other facility in Livingston on Northfield Road, what is the?
It's very similar. The square footages of the sites are almost the same,
Right.
quite frankly. The buildings are almost identical. So the numbers here today that I gave you are pretty much similar over there. The one difference, again, is the urgent care, which is located at 75 East Northfield. It's designed a little differently, right? It's not your typical exam rooms. It's more set up like not an emergency room, but it doesn't, it has your bays type of a scenario. And then the imaging department obviously has a very high volume of patients that come through it for all of the modalities that are in there. The imaging department at 75 East Northfield is, I believe, off the top of my head, somewhere around 9,000 square feet, so it's pretty large.
And the staff at the existing facility, how many?
At the existing facility, it's probably the same here, so 55 or so it's a very similar ratio.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members? Counsel, do you have any questions for this witness as to his testimony? Yes. Yeah, if you can come up to the microphone, please.
Thanks.
Hi, Mr. Natal.
Hello, how are you?
When did you identify this location as the right spot for expansion for Summit Medical?
I want to say probably within the last 20 months. I don't know the exact date where we started to search in Livingston, but I want to say probably within the last 20 months we started to have the conversations of seeking a property in this general area. The exact date of when we said this is the property we'd like to go to, I honestly can't answer that question.
Okay, so in almost the last 2 years.
Definitely, it's definitely within the last 2 years, yeah. When we operate and we are looking to expand, these conversations don't happen overnight. There's a lot of analytics that we need to look at. We need to make sure that the volumes are there, the need is there. So, you know, anything that we build of this size is, at least for me, usually a 2-year process. So it's safe to say within the last 2 years, we've identified that we wanted to expand in Livingston. Again, when we exactly chose this particular location, I can't give you that date.
Okay. Do you know when you started collecting data on this location?
Within the last 2 years, the best I could tell you.
You said there will be procedures performed at this facility?
No procedures.
No
performed.
procedures.
All outpatient, strictly doctor's office visits and your typical exam room. All ambulatory, no anesthesia.
You mentioned that the volumes of patients coming through here are negligible, but is there a number that's considered negligible in your opinion?
I don't think I testified that it was negligible. I testified that there would be approximately 200 patients a day coming to this facility. I definitely did not testify that the numbers were negligible. I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you, how that reference, negligible to what?
You said that in other facilities that
What I
abutted a
think- what I s-
residential area.
What I said was,
negligible.
on the weekends, when the facility is open on the weekends, the patient volumes and numbers are negligible, meaning that the volume is so low on a weekend that it is nowhere near the volume of a Monday through Friday type of a scenario. So if we have 200 patients a day coming through Monday through Friday, maybe on a weekend, it's 20. That's what I meant. That's probably what you meant when I said
Okay.
negligible. Weekend and after hours, the numbers are negligible compared to normal operating hours.
And the normal operating hours, you said, were 7 a.m. to about 8 p.m.
7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, and no hours contemplated on Sunday at this time.
And you were mentioning the waste and the trash and all of those. The trash compactor that's supposed to be on the premises, where will that be located?
Other professionals will testify to
Okay.
that tonight, and you'll
Yeah,
see
my
it in our
engineer's
resume.
already next, so he'll point out all those locations.
Okay. Right. I'd like to ask if any of the residents have questions for me.
Are there any members of the public that have questions for this witness as to his testimony? Yes. And just so that you are not being represented by counsel, you're separate on your own?
No, I'm being represented by,
Maybe like a consultant?
Hi, committee and Summit Medical. Can you hear me?
Yeah, name and address, please.
My name is James Mignone, 33 Collinwood Avenue, Livingston, New Jersey. We've been a member of Livingston for 60 years. That home has been in our home. So I know some of you on the committee, so thank you for keeping Livingston a beautiful community. We're also patients of Summit Medical. Beautiful doctors, beautiful groups.
Yeah,
and-
we're, just
but-
ask
But the
just
question
ask questions of the witness,
is
would
I
be great.
like the way that
Can you also can you spell your last name for the record, please?
Mignone.
Thank you.
And I may engage counsel later. So right now, I'm unrepresented.
And
But what-
your address again?
33 Collinwood, Collinwood Avenue, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039. I just wanted to make sure. Didn't want you to keep interrupting me, because I was already yelled at for speaking too long.
If
So-
you have any questions for the witness,
Yes,
please go
I
ahead.
am. I'm going there right now. Thank you, Rudy. So the biggest concern that I have is I disagree with one big thing that you're saying, because I
Well,
go
do you have
procedures-
so at the end of the hearing, so when all the witnesses have spoken, you'll have a chance to get up and make a sworn statement with your overall opinion about the project. So right now, it's just questions for the witness about the witness's testimony.
Okay, about the testimony, you specifically raised the issue about number of patients being similar to that of the facility on Northfield Avenue. I disagree, because I've done many procedures in that facility, and it takes me an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 2.5
So
hours.
do you have,
A doctor's office, those numbers are wrong, because you have
do you have
55
a-
doctor's offices.
do you have a question? Do you have a
So
question?
I don't believe that those numbers are wrong. How did you calculate
So
them?
you will have an opportunity
But
to,
I understand,
for
but
all
really-
of, to say all of this at the end under what you'll be sworn in, you'll be say all this at the end.
So
But
what
do you
is
have
the
any, do you have any,
purpose of this?
if you have any questions for the witness
How did you
about his
calculate the
testimony?
data?
The data is calculated based on the departments that are going here. There are no procedures at this particular facility, so
yes.
the type of services that are being rendered at this facility do not equate to the services that are being rendered exactly apples for apples at 75 East Northfield. So based on data from our 900 locations across the country and mostly from the Northeast, these are the average numbers for the patients' volumes of the departments that will actually be residing in this location. That's how it calculates.
And your parking lots are always full there, too.
That's a good thing.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Counsel, did you have anything else after consulting with your client?
He hasn't engaged me yet.
Okay.
However,
I normally stand on principle, like you're represented by counsel.
Counsel?
Green means go.
a couple more questions. What would prevent you from offering hours on a Sunday? Nothing.
Nothing.
Okay. And there's a question regarding the average patient seen, the numbers that you gave us. Is there something finite that you used? Like that, how you collected your data? You said you used it around the Northeast, or was it based on like the Livingston locations?
It's historical numbers, average patient volumes, based on the type of departments and the number of providers that will be located at this facility, along with the square footage. It is an average of the expected volume based on the departments that will reside and be placed at this facility.
So do you already know which departments are going to be placed at this facility?
I gave them to you before, yeah.
And how many in total were there?
7. 7 including lab.
You said that's including the lobotomy lab?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public, please come up, name and address, please. And you're not being represented by by counsel, that's your correct?
That's right.
Okay.
I'm not.
Name and address, please.
Dennis Fisher. I live at 10 Collins Terrace. That's directly across the street.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question was, what was the impacted, or the anticipated impact on the construction, and how long it'll take, and what sort of timing
Will
envision?
will one of your other experts test?
We will be touching on all aspects of the design, and I'll have somebody try to give an idea of what a time frame would be for a reconstruction of a commercial building in a commercial zone district.
We'll wait till one of the experts comes on to testify, and they'll
Yeah, I'd
probably
like
be
it
better
to
able
be
to
addressed.
be able to address your concern. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Weilin, W-E-I-L-I-N. I live in 19 Cornister, which just next to the parking lot, the property. So my question is,
Chairman, can we just get a spelling?
Yeah,
on
can
the
you spell that for
court
you, please?
recorder?
okay, W-E-I, Lin, L-I-N.
What was the first name?
William?
N, yeah, W-E-I-L-I-N, like Nancy. Lin,
And can you have address one more time, please?
got it?
I think he said 19 Collins.
Yeah, 19 Cornister, just next to the parking lot.
Thank you.
I want to know, is the property, the owner is changing the ownership or just they just change the building?
I'm sorry?
I mean, the property owner, they want to change the ownership or they just change the building to another model now?
Yeah, so, well, I'll answer. So 39 West Northfield Associates owns the property.
Yes.
They've held it as a vacant property, so the proposal is to develop a medical office building, and Summit Health would be the tenant within the building.
Okay, so, all right. So I want to know, is there's like you say, there's another Summit Health Group down the street, and I know another like urgent care on the South Livingston Avenue. So I want to know why we need so many medical centers in such small areas, you know?
Well,
I think the question
Mr.
maybe goes to maybe a little bit of your what you
Wait,
went through in order to determine that this is a viable location for you, without, I guess, disclosing any proprietary information.
What I could say is this, is that we've been operating in the town of Livingston for quite some time. I think it's been 2014, since 2014 that we built 75 East Northfield. We also operated 315 East Northfield. Again, 200 South Orange Ave, which is not in the district area, but 315 and 75 East Northfield. Both of those facilities are at their max. We cannot expand services. There is a demand from patients in this area, both from the town of Livingston and the surrounding areas, that would like additional access to specialty providers and not have to wait 4 months to get an appointment. So that's been identified in this area as an issue, an access issue, meaning that if you want to go to the doctor, it may take you 4 months to get an appointment right now.
Excuse me, if you'd like to have some questions, then you can come up to the microphone at that point. But there's no testifying from the audience, please. Okay, if you can continue.
So many of the services that are offered, the access is not there. Dermatology is one of those pinch points where it may take 6 months to get a dermatology appointment. It's not acceptable.
Okay.
So in order to be able to expand and open access, the decision was made to put capital money into the town of Livingston.
Okay, I understand.
And build a building so that we can better serve the community.
So what
is the
concerns when you rebuild a building or you take care of parking lot and the fence or all the landscaping?
So the way that this arrangement is going to be structured, it's going to be a triple net lease type of scenario, which means that Summit Health is responsible for all of the maintenance of the general grounds and the building.
Because there's a fence over there which hit by car. I think it's hard hit and caused a bend.
There'll probably be testimony about this later.
We're going to have detailed testimony from my next witness, who's going to be our civil engineer. He's going to put the plans up. He's going to show all aspects of the design, where the parking lot is, where the fencing is, et cetera. I cannot speak to somebody running into the fence in the past based on when it was a health club that operated 7 days a week, but we'll testify to what our plan is.
And there'll be testimony about, the traffic flow, the parking, landscaping, lighting. There'll be experts testifying to that. So do you have any other questions for this witness as to his
And what I would say
testimony?
is, in the future, there is going to be a beautiful new fence there. It'll be shown, I believe, tonight.
Yeah,
car
okay,
runs
okay,
into it,
okay, hope so.
we
I
will,
hope so.
we will fix it.
Okay, hope so.
We'll fix it, I promise.
Like usually you have somebody help you to clean the parking lot, right? Because someone, they done the garbage between the fence, which is my fence and your fence, there's gap already.
So what we do at facilities such as this is we have what's called a day porter. A day porter is our daytime housekeeping
Before
crew.
the sports car, they don't. nobody
Hold on,
come.
I'm gonna answer you. I don't know what the gym did. I wasn't part of the gym. I don't care what the gym did. I wish the gym treated you guys better. It sounds like you had some struggles there. Our facility, the way we operate is we have what are called day porters. They're daytime housekeepers that also service the inside of the facility. Part of the duties of the daytime porters is to do exterior trash removal. We do this at all of our facilities where we're responsible for the parking lot. They will go out once, maybe even twice a day. Generally, they do it first thing in the morning, to be honest, where they will walk the perimeter of the entire parking lot. They will pick up any debris, any trash, the fence line, you know, they will make sure our property is kept clean. So our daytime housekeeping porter service will be there at all times when the facility is operating to keep the facility clean inside and out.
Okay, now concern the traffic, okay? So,
Trash, you asked about trash.
no, now, next,
Traffic is going to be another.
Yeah, that'll be
witness,
addressed by other witnesses.
another,
We have a
Yeah.
traffic engineer who's going to be testifying.
Yeah, there'll be other experts testifying.
okay, so how about when you get in the parking lot, you use only one entrance? which one-
There'll be testimony about that later.
Later? Okay.
This is more just dealing with the operations of the facility. This is what
So,
we're really, what this testimony is focusing on.
One of the things that everybody should understand, a witness will testify as to a subject. You have the right to ask questions about what that witness said. If you have a question about something else, you have to wait until there's a witness who talks about that. And that's the way the meeting goes most smoothly. So keep that in mind. Your questions are as to what the one witness was talking about. When you have your concern that you want to express, that comes later, when you get a chance to make a sworn statement under oath as to what you like or don't like or what you're worried about. Two different things. Right now, we're just in the question stage. So questions are very good, but talking about problems, this isn't the time. That's later.
So when you are doing the construction, so people still able to get in the parking lot, go to the.
The construction aspect was going to be, as you've heard before, will be addressed by somebody else. There was no testimony about construction by this
I know,
witness.
but I have to go to the post office over there, so I have
They'll-
to go
they'll-
through.
they will- All that will be discussed later
This correct.
by other witnesses.
So, like you say, there have to be a like doctor's office. So like how many staff, like 40 staff gonna work over there regularly?
At the new office?
Yeah.
We're estimating 55.
55. So there's no like two-story buildings, so,
Right, all that will be part of the engineering and the landscape and the architect testimony. Okay,
Okay.
that's still to come.
all right. Okay, so far.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counsel, if I can ask you from now on to get all your questions, please, at one time.
Sure, I'll work on that. Just a follow-up question. You said it was a triple net lease. The actual owners of the property, are they here?
Why do you, why?
And what's the,
question?
I was just wondering, he mentioned that it was a
Owner's
triple.
representative here.
Okay, and the name of the company
It's
is?
the name of the applicant.
Okay, so essentially the address. Okay, thank you.
thank you. Any other members of the public? Counsel, any redirect?
Nothing further, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. If you can,
Mr. Chairman,
okay.
go ahead, Rosie.
I'm sorry if I'm confused or it was my misunderstanding. Was this supposed to be a facility for women, like a women's health center? Or was that
No.
misrepresented to the council?
This is not going to be a dedicated women's center.
Was it supposed to be at some point?
You know, a long time ago, I think that's where that came from. It was, there was an idea that a women's center would be developed here. I know where you're coming from with that. That is no longer the case. It's going to be just straight medical services, not branded as just a women's center.
Okay.
It's going to be for everybody.
Yeah, the council, I don't think, had been told that that was the case, so I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Yes.
I just want to go back to the hours, because obviously that has an impact on what this entire operation is going to be. So the commitment that you're making now, and this comes from you, not from any other witness, and obviously you're the part of the organization that's running this. These hours are firm and are not changing.
They're not changing.
Okay. So it's Monday to Friday, 7 to 8,
Yes.
give or take a minute
These
or
are
two.
these are our
Understood.
operating hours
And
across the organization.
Saturday,
Yeah.
8 to 1,
Is it 8 or 7?
7 to 1.
7 to
Seven to
1,
Yeah.
and no Sunday.
No Sunday.
Although you said
No,
Sunday's
contemplated,
a
Mr. Diner, but we're
Sunday's a
not looking to
possibility, I thought the
foreclose that.
testimony was.
I'm hearing 3 different people. What was the answer?
The answer is no hours for Sunday are contemplated right now, but we would like to leave it open for the potential for the future. And if we were to operate on Sunday, it would be very similar to Saturday, 7 to 1 at a very, very limited capacity.
Okay, so right now, no Sunday,
That is
but if you did Sunday, it would be
Same
no
hours as
worse
Saturday.
than Saturday.
That's
Correct.
exactly
Okay.
correct. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else from the board? Thank you very much. If you can please call your next witness.
Mr. Lanzafama.
And if the reporter
Sarah,
can please
you just,
administer the oath.
Swear him in.
I do. My name is Michael Lanzafama, that's Lanzafama. I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor and planner, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey and Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millborough, New Jersey. I've testified before this board and similar boards throughout the state for over 40 years, and I've been accepted as an expert witness here and in other communities.
And that's both, can I just assume, have you address it now, that's both as a professional engineer and a professional planner, correct?
That's correct.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from council? So without objection, the board accepts Mr. Lanzafama as an expert in planning and engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got us on? No? That's not good. I know.
Once upon a time, we had flip charts. Now it's high technology.
Mr. Blake brought boards.
Peter
just for
remembers the oil
record.
lamps.
I'm glad you remembered that I had that experience.
That looks better. Thank you. Okay. There we go.
Something's happening.
There we go. There we go. So the property in question, what I have up on the board, on the screen at the moment is, I will, I'll get there. So the sheet that I currently have up on the screen is the cover sheet from the plan set that was submitted to the board. And as you can see, the property in question is tax lot 9 in block 4801. Excuse me, it's 39 West Northfield Road. And the property in question is the parcel that was the former Jackal Lane. Before that, it was actually a food market at one time. So it's had a long life at this property, this building, this particular building. As you can see from the exhibit, the property has a very irregular shape. It is located on the southwesterly side of West Northfield Road, and it's approximately 260 feet west of the intersection of South Livingston Avenue. The property has frontage on Collins Terrace, as well as West Harrison Place to the south. As you can see, the majority of the property is fully developed with an existing commercial building, 1 story in height, as well as an expansive parking area located to the south and east of the building. The surrounding uses, there are retail, sales, and service uses, including the post office immediately to the east. There's a bank, financial institutions, as well as retail space located to the south. There are residential properties in the R4 zone located to the west across Collins Terrace. And then between Collins and West Harrison, there are 2 single-family structures that are immediately adjacent to the site. And then across West Harrison Place are similar single-family homes located in the R4 zone district. Looking at the existing condition survey of the property, which is sheet 3 on your plan set, you can see from the survey that was prepared by our office that the building is located, the existing structure is located in the northwest corner of the property. The building itself is a 1-story structure, 24,538 square feet in size. With the existing parking area, the total impervious area on the property is nearly 100,000 square feet. The property itself is 3.141 acres in size, which is just over 136,000 square feet. So you can see a significant portion of the property is already significantly developed with parking and an existing structure. Access to the property, as you can see from the survey, is primarily from Collins Terrace. There's a 2-way driveway that exists at that location. And then adjoining the commercial property immediately to our east, we have there's an access easement that allows for ingress into the site. The parking area currently provides parking for 174 parking spaces with 6 handicap spaces located immediately behind the building. As you can see from the plan, the topography of the site, it's relatively flat. There's no real significant grade change until you get to the southern end of the property, where you can see that there is a change in topography that occurs along that common boundary with West Harrison Place. The runoff from this paved area is collected by a series of catch basins located within the parking lot. Much of that stormwater is directed towards West Northfield Road and Collins, where there's an existing stormwater collection system at that location. The area further to the south just sheet flows towards West Harrison Terrace. There are no steep slopes on the property. There's no wetlands that are located on this property, and the property is not located in a flood hazard area. The site plan that we're proposing, or the plan of development that we're proposing, and what I'd like to use to display that is a color rendering of sheet number 5, which is the site plan for the property. Let's get this to work.
We should mark that as Exhibit A1.
Yes, please. What's that doing there?
Just,
Okay.
Mike, can you just identify that for the record? What is
Sure.
Exhibit A1, give the date and
Yep.
description.
What has been marked as A1 is a colorized version of the site plan, which is sheet number 5 in the plan set. Come on. And it has a revision date of August 16th, 2023. And what this shows you, it shows you that the proposed building will be constructed basically in the same footprint of the existing structure. The building will be 2 stories, however, in size, and with a small basement area of 6,800 square feet, it brings the total building area to 55,200 square feet. As Mr. Natal had testified to earlier, the structure is primarily for medical office use. The basement would be for mechanicals, a possible staff lounge, and for a lab space in that lower level. The two-way access off of Collins Terrace would be slightly reconfigured and maintained. There will be adequate sight distance from that driveway along the axis of Collins Terrace, both to the south and to the north. There will be signs that will restrict left turn movements out of that driveway. So the motorists coming out of the site will have to make a right-hand turn onto Collins Terrace and out to Northfield, where they can proceed in any direction to get home. And arrivals, too, would come in off of Northfield and into the site from that location. We also wish to take the existing ingress driveway and make it an egress driveway. That driveway, too, would be restricted as to left turns. It would only be right turns out from that driveway. And what that allows for better circulation within the parking area. As you're aware, the retail space adjacent to us houses the post office and some other retail uses. There is a parking field directly behind that building. That property has access rights from Collins to this property to get to their parking area. This parcel was cut out of the original parent parcel that housed the, it was a food fair, was it, I believe? And at that time, when it was sold off and subdivided off, easements were granted for that property to gain access to the parking at the rear of that facility. Ingress and egress easement was retained by the property owner at that time, 16 foot in width. And as you can see, it still exists and functions. However, it's been made as a one-way driveway. Originally in, we're going to convert that to a one-way out. We did have a meeting with that property owner, and he had no objection to that modification in the design. Parking for the facility under the residential, I'm on multifamily housing mode these days. Under your ordinance, the parking requirement for medical office is 1 car for every 200 square feet of gross floor area. The building of this size would equate to 276 parking spaces would be required. As you may be aware, the state of New Jersey passed a law that requires that every property that's redeveloped or developed has to provide for electric vehicle charging stations. In this particular instance, for use of this type, the requirement is to have 10 EV charging stations in that location for this property, and at least one of those spaces has to be handicap accessible. So as you can see from the exhibit, the area The area along the common boundary with 19 Collins would be to create EV charging stations along that area. We would have 8 there, and we would have 2 located at the end of the island area in this, immediately behind the building, which would include 1 handicap spot. Under the state law, you get a credit of 1 car for every EV charging station you put in, and reducing the required number of parking spaces required for your project. So in this particular case, because we have 10, we reduce the number of required spaces from 276 to 266 spaces. The plan currently proposes 230 spaces. So as part of our application, we're asking for a variance of 36 spaces under the current zoning ordinance. 36 is the extent of the relief that we're seeking. In addition to...
May I interrupt? There was 36 spaces designated for employees, correct?
34,
34 designated for employees.
that's correct.
Was it my misunderstanding that the testimony was that there would be 55 plus employees
That's
in the
correct.
facility? That's correct? Okay, thank you.
I'll get to the details of the parking area in a second. As part of the design, we are proposing to have the 10 EV charging stations. We're also proposing to have 8 handicap accessible spaces, which is the requirement under the ADA requirements for a parking lot of this size. All of the parking stalls will be 9 feet wide by 18 feet deep, except for the employee parking spaces, which would be 8.5 feet wide and hairpin striped as required by your ordinance. And those spaces would be located at the southern end of the parking lot. And we did that specifically to help reduce activity that might occur at the rear portion of the parking lot, closer to the residences along Harrison. Since all of the stalls are 9 by 18, those that are head-to-head, as you can see in the central portion of the property, would require a variance as to stall size. The ordinance defines a parking space as one that is 9 by 20 feet deep. However, those that have the ability to overhang along the perimeter can be reduced to 18 feet. We have done that along the perimeter, but we've also employed that concept where they're head-to-head, so we would need relief from the board with regard to that. With regard to parking setback, the original plan, and as a matter of fact, the original parking lot has a number of parking spaces that are directed towards the adjoining residential properties on Collins and Harrison, those 2 lots that exist immediately to our west. And what we've done is we tried to reconfigure that parking and pull it back. Under your ordinance, there is a requirement to have a 25-foot setback of parking spaces to residential areas. That's section 170-94A.5. And the existing condition is for a very consistent area, it's 15.51 feet currently. Under existing.
Can you point that out with the cursor, just so everyone knows
Sure.
what you're talking about?
So the area through here, through the southern portion of the parking lot, adjacent to the Harrison Avenue lot, as well as the area adjacent to 19 Collins Terrace, is the area where the setback is only 15.51 feet under existing conditions. Under proposed conditions, we're pushing that back slightly. The area to the southern, southwest corner, if you would, will be, the closest point will be 16.5 feet. And the area, the parking spaces along 19 Collins would be over 20 feet at the rear portion and about 18 or 19 feet at the front corner. So the cars along that section that are facing 19 Collins are really almost in the exact same location as they currently existed for quite a few years. We're also employing a new fence in that area you can see the line with the little squares represents a solid PVC fence that would be constructed along that parking area. There would be new granite block curb placed along the edge of the parking lot, and the fence is set back far enough so you don't have a scenario where cars are pulling right up to the fence and knocking into the fence. The refuse area, the enclosed refuse area is a 12 by 20 refuse area to be located at the end of that first parking row. It makes it easily accessible by the refuse trucks and is set back far enough from the property lines to meet any accessory structure setback requirement for the business zone. This location does, like as I said, does allow for easy access by the refuse trucks. They can simply pull in directly to into the site and service the refuse area, and then back up and then pull around and exit. I'll have an exhibit for that shortly. As I mentioned, the employee parking areas are all along the rear portion of the site. Under your ordinance, employee parking spaces can be reduced in size to 8.5 feet by 18 feet because of the small turnover that would exist as employees. So we do have 34 of those spaces located at the very edge of the property. To just take a quick look at the vehicle turning exhibit, this is for an emergency vehicle coming into the site. This would be Exhibit A2, John. Yep. This is a new item. This is, we've identified this, if I can get this to come down. There we go. This is the truck turning exhibit utilizing the fire truck. This is identified as sheet E1, and it should be dated, yep, it's dated today, September 5th. And what you can see from this exhibit, September 5th, and you can see from the exhibit, you know, the firefighting apparatus would come in off of Northfield with the, you know, you have fire station on South Livingston, another one at Northfield near the circle. So they would come in off of Northfield, come in through Collins, be able to negotiate around the, excuse me, backside of the building so they could fight a fire, then could easily exit the site through the same path and end up back to Northfield. The other exhibit is the garbage truck or the refuse truck. This would be A3. Excuse me. And this is truck turning exhibit refuse with the same date. And you can, and this is E2.
Sheet E2.
Thank you. And again, you can see that the vehicle can come into the site, negotiate to the refuse area, and then pull back, and then circulate out and come back out to Collins Terrace without any incident. Back to the site plan. Okay. Just quickly, I'd like to just go through the zoning criteria for the B zone and indicate how the bulk standards are being complied with. Under the ordinance, the front setback that's required, which would be from Northfield, the requirement is a greater of 15 feet or 50 feet from the center line. In this particular case, the building will be set back over 20 feet or 70 feet from the center line of the roadway. So that's compliant. The side street setback, which would be Collins would have to be a minimum of 10. We're at 19.3 feet. The side yard setback is there's 0 required or 10 feet from a residential zone. The one front corner of the building is basically on the setback. If I could move this, you could see the one corner is right on the setback, or right on the property line, excuse me. And the rear setback, the requirement is equal to the height of the building, 25-foot minimum. The rear setback in this case is over 300 feet, so that's fully compliant. Accessory structure setback to the residential zone is 10 feet. We're at 16.3, again, compliant. Building height, 28 feet. We're at 27 feet and 2 stories, so we are compliant. Lot coverage, 90% is permitted. Existing, we're at just over 72, at 72.7%, and that will be increased to 80.7%. So there'll be an increase of about 10,000 square feet of new impervious area resulting from the new building and the expanded parking lot. The floor area ratio, the requirement is 45% under the zone. The existing structure is at 17.93%. The new proposal would be at 40.34%. So as you can see from the zoning table and the numbers I just recited to you, that we are fully compliant with the ordinance, with the exception of the setback from the residential property with the existing parking, and we're actually improving the existing nonconformity in that particular instance. Moving on to the grading and drainage plan. Let's see. And one more. Okay. This is sheet number 8, I believe, in your plan set. Yep. This is sheet number 8. This is the grading and drainage plan, and this also has a date of August 16th, 2023. So what we're proposing to do is truly minimize the amount of disturbance on the site in an effort to keep the existing footprint as close as possible, and it really is a building designed to be exactly the footprint on the existing structure, where the existing structure was located. But we also introduced some landscaped islands to kind of break up the sea of pavement that once existed back there. We are expanding, but we're managing that. We're managing that with a bio-retention swale that would be constructed at the rear of the property, so that what we're doing is we're taking the roof water from the building and certain portions of the parking lot in the north and western corners and repurposing the existing infrastructure that's there and directing it out to the drainage system on Northfield. Some of the area that once sheet flowed towards West Harrison will now be intercepted by this bioswale that will exist along the full extent of the parking lot. And a bioswale is basically a linear device used by regrading the land so that the water sheets into it from the parking lot side, gets captured because the downstream side rises up, creating a berm that intercepts this water. It allows the water to filter through a soil-sand mixture, and that purifies the water column. Once a storm greater than the water quality storm, which is 1.25 inches of rainfall in 24 hours, once a storm becomes more severe than that, for example, the 2-year storm, the 10-year storm, and the 100-year storm, we have 4 catch basins located along that trench, if you would, that swale. And they're elevated above the floor of the trench. So it allows that, what we call the first flush of runoff, to be allowed to percolate through that sand soil filtration system.
Mike, can you just use your cursor, because I know people are looking at a lot of lines up there, and I know you.
Well, there's,
Just if you can just
okay,
kind of
there you
point out
see it changes.
kind of where the bioswale is, at
Yes.
least just directionally. I
The
think that'd help.
the bioswale is located along, I don't know if you could see that marker there. Yeah, along the rear end of the parking lot. And there are 4 catch basins, 1, 2, 3, and then there's a 4th one down below. And what will happen is the water will build up in this swale and then overflow into these catch basins, and then be contained within 4 24-inch diameter storage pipes located underneath the swale and underneath the parking lot. They'll be embedded in stone, and our preliminary soil testing indicated that we had a decent permeability rate of 1 inch per hour, so we'll be able to accomplish groundwater recharge, which is another requirement of the best management practices. So we're able to handle water quality, we're able to handle groundwater recharge, and we're also able to reduce peak flows from the site by 50% for the 2-year storm, 25% for the 10-year, and 20% for the 100-year storm. Now, this pipe, this system does have an outlet pipe that would be constructed from the detention area, and it would run to the west up Harrison Place and tie into the existing storm sewer system located at the intersection of Collinwood Avenue and West Harrison Place. Now, we've reduced the peak runoff from this portion of the site to no more than what those pipes can handle. So we went even beyond the 50% reduction and the 20 and 25% reduction. We used the maximum capacity in those pipes as the way to determine what the allowable discharge would be from that area. And with the introduction of the parking islands and landscaped areas within the parking islands, the reduction to the areas to the west and to the north were already accomplished in that methodology. So the long and the short of it is we are adding just over 10,000 square feet of new impervious area, but the impact resulting from stormwater coming from this site will be improved. We'll be reducing peak runoff rates to the various points of study, which was a point to the west and to the north, as well as to the intersection of South Harrison, or West Harrison Place and Collins Terrace. The other elements that we have to look at as far as potential impacts to the site are other infrastructure items such as water, sewer, electricity. How do we service this building utilizing the existing infrastructure in the area? Well, we did an analysis for sanitary and water. Because of the prior use, the increase in water demand and sewer generation is not as significant as it would have been if we were building a 55,200 square foot building on a virgin site. So the net increase in sanitary sewer flow is 3,066 gallons per day. The increase in water demand is 3,833 gallons per day. So neither one of these numbers trigger what's often referred to as a treatment works approval or a water permit from the Bureau of Safe Drinking Water. So we're well within the limits established, so we don't need any state permitting to permit this building to connect to the existing.
Mike, what would be the number?
8,000 gallons per
8,000
day
is the trigger?
is the threshold for a TWA permit. We were also planning on video cammering the existing sewer connection to make sure it's in good shape. We feel that its size is sufficient for what we're proposing to do. There's an existing transformer that exists, off of Collins, that will have to be upgraded, but we're proposing to keep it in the same location, and that would have to be upgraded to handle the power that's needed for this building. And water is readily available from Collins and Northfield as well. So based upon that, we feel that this site can easily support this building, taking into consideration the fact that we have a number of best management practices being employed. We believe that it's our opinion that stormwater runoff would be controlled properly and reduced in many cases, allowing for groundwater recharge and the reduction in not only peak flow rates, but also volumes of runoff would also be controlled through this system. As part of the site plan design and the building design, there's signage that is proposed for the building. There are a number of signs that we are proposing on the building, and we're also proposing one freestanding sign on the building, or not on the building, but adjacent to the building at the intersection of Collins Terrace and West Northfield Road. So just to give a quick rundown, there are signage proposed at the entrance to the structure off of Northfield over the canopy. And then on that facade, we're also proposing a sign that would be located up towards the top of the structure that would simply say 39W, giving it its identification and its street number. And then coming around to Collins Terrace, right at that northwest corner, we would have a Summit Health sign. You'll see the details of those signs when Mr. Blake testifies. And then the monument sign is just located approximately 10 feet off of Collins Terrace right-of-way and 5 feet off of the West Northfield Road right-of-way. And then we will also have a canopy-mounted sign facing the parking lot. So there are 2 canopy-mounted signs over the entryways. There'll be 2 wall-mounted signs, one being the 39W and the other being the Summit Health sign, and then the freestanding monument sign. The freestanding monument sign would be 2 feet 9 inches high by 6 feet wide, and it violates Section 170-90C because monument signs are not permitted in the B zone. The canopy signs are permissible under the ordinance. You're allowed to have a sign facing each street and your parking in the rear. So technically, we're allowed to have 3 signs on the building, so we're proposing 4. So there would be a variance from Section 170-90C2 as to the number of signs being permitted. We also need some relief with regard to how the signs are configured on the canopies. The zoning ordinance never really contemplated this type of approach, which has been done by several architects recently, and it actually improves the aesthetics of the building in my mind, and that's to place the letters for the sign at the very edge of the canopy. So under your ordinance, a wall-mounted sign has to be no more than 15 inches from the face of the building. So in this particular case, they would be mounted at the extreme end of the canopy, so they would exceed that 15-inch restriction. And that's under Section 170-90C1 and C7. The canopy signs, we've numbered the signs as you go around the building. The canopy sign facing Northfield we've identified it as sign number 2. This is 3 foot 3 inches high by 22 feet long. which would be 71.5 square feet in size. Under your ordinance, the sign is allowed to be 90% of the length of the building at the 22-foot dimension. That would put it at 14.3% of the facade width. And we're allowed to cover a certain percentage of the facade, and that sign would be equal to 1.6% of the facade, well in compliance with the ordinance. Moving around to sign number 3, which is the 39W sign. That would also be 3 foot 3 inches high by 10 feet long. That would be 33 square feet, 6.5% of the facade length, and 0.7% of the facade face. Sign number 4, facing Collins Terrace, would be 4 foot 8 inches high by 13 foot 6 inches long, or 64.8 square feet in size, and that would be equal to 8.1% of the facade length and 1.3% of the facade face, again, in full compliance with the ordinance. Sign number 5, which actually faces the parking lot, is 3 foot 3 inches high by 17 feet 6 inches in length, or 56.88 square feet in total area, 11% of the facade length and 1.2% of the facade face. So the signs are compliant as to size, well below what's permitted in the B zone. They will be illuminated. The monument sign would be ground lit, and the canopy signs would have like a halo effect to them, and the building mounted signs would have a similar lighting approach to them. So that pretty much summarizes, I believe I've covered and enumerated the extent of the variances we're seeking. We're seeking variances for the number of parking spaces, that being 36. We're seeking variances with regard to the dimensions of the parking stalls, with the interior stalls being 9 by 18, where 9 by 20 are required. We're asking for relief on the setback of the existing parking area to the residential zones. We're actually improving that existing nonconformity a bit. 15.51 is existing, 16.5 is what we're proposing, and we're also proposing new fencing through that area. We're also seeking variances as to the signs. The monument sign is not permitted in the zone. The number of signs we have on the building exceeds what's allowed by one. That is the 39W is the extra sign that we are seeking here. And the way the signs are mounted to the building, the 15-inch maximum is what is allowed under the ordinance, and we're proposing a number greater than that because of the variation in the canopies. That number varies slightly.
Michael, what is the exact setback?
I'm going to have to talk to Mr. Blake about that. Where are the signs actually positioned on the canopy? Right at the very edge? So how far from the building is that? It varies, right? The front and back are different. Maybe Mr. Blake will have to supplement my testimony, and I'll be coming back for my planning testimony, and we'll get into the proofs of that. I just wanted to make sure that all of the variances were enumerated and identified.
Mike? I mean, I didn't want to interrupt.
I defer, Mr. Banner.
Thank you, sir. Of the number of spaces in which you're asking for a variance for smaller dimensions, of the total 260 spaces, 66 spaces,
We have 230 spaces.
I'm sorry, 230 that you're providing.
Yes,
How many of those require variances for size?
84.
84 of those. Are any spaces compact in addition?
No, That was on the original proposal,
Right.
and we amended that. We eliminated them and converted them to employee parking spaces, where we used the full depth, the 18 feet, and the 8.5-foot width with the hairpin striping.
Okay. Did you do any comparison between the number of parking spaces used at the existing building, or is someone else maybe going to talk?
Harold will touch.
Mr.
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 Maltz will
Maltz.
touch on that, Mr.
Yes.
Dunn.
Thank you. Okay.
I just have one more question. I know that the adjacent building is separate, and I know that there was a cutout for that parking. Is that going to leave enough parking spaces in the adjacent building to conform to our rules for parking?
Those spaces are on other property. They were not included in our counts at all.
But wasn't it in the past, when I drove by the New York Sports Club or even to the post office, that was a shared parking lot in the past?
It's not officially a shared parking lot.
But it was back then.
I don't believe so. There's nothing in the title that we saw when we did the survey work that granted cross-parking agreement. There was cross-access agreement, but not cross-parking agreement. So I don't believe that that's legally in place. And as a matter of fact, I think in one of Mr. Marucci's review memos, he had indicated he'd like to get that signed or marked, no parking, post office, no parking, or something to that effect.
I understand the difference between the legality of it and what is written and what was actually happening.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think what our intention was in response to Mr. Marucci's comments. Yeah. Our intention is, as Mr. Lanzafama said, was to provide some sort of signage, reserving it for the post office or whatever is there. And I think we weren't sure whether ground.
Right. We were getting, there was,
Whether it be ground markings or actual
signs. We thought the
spaced
ground
out in that location.
markings might be better.
My experience with that property over the years was that on occasion, if somebody tried to park there, not going into one of those shops or to the post office, somebody would come out and ask you to move. I don't think it's ever been shared parking, and one of the questions I was going to ask was how the respective property owners are going to protect their parking spaces unless they're willing to enter into a shared parking agreement.
Yeah, so it's not our intention to modify the existing agreements, Mr. Klein, but to provide signage, really just to protect them and their ability to have sufficient parking pursuant to the agreements for their needs.
There's a two-edged sword there, too. And that's,
Whether
they're pulling into your spaces where you already don't have enough parking based on the current zoning, and how are you going to stop that? You could lose another 10 or 15 of your parking spaces.
Yeah, I don't think we were terribly concerned with it based on the uses, but why don't we just hold that until we get to Mr. Maltz in a
Okay.
little bit.
Thank you.
It's a point taken.
Will
And-
the cross easement agreement remain intact?
Yeah. It's not, nothing's proposed to change in that regard.
So before continuing, we're going to take a break, but before we take a break, why don't we take a break now? And then I want to ask whether our professionals have any questions, and then also whether our board members have any questions, and then we'll go to council and the public. So why don't we take a 5-minute or so break for a little bit? going to be starting back up?
Okay,
Gonna listen.
just make sure that.
Yeah. Funny thing, I emailed it to him, and he may have just taken the attachment, the renderings, and everything else, and it showed up.
Hey, John, let me do the correction first.
Yep, yep.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. As long as everybody's ready to go. Why don't we start back up? And I think there might have been, Mr. Lansafama might have had a couple other points you wanted to make before we then go to our professionals and the board and then the public.
I'd like to.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'd like to make a correction to my answer to Mr. Diner's question about the number of parking spaces that are only 9 by 18. I forgot to include the 28 double row here, so it's another 56, so that brings the number to 140.
What was it,
140, 140.
So 140
Out of the 230.
need a variance for size.
That is correct.
So not 9 by 18, where 9 by
20 is
20 is
required
required.
by the ordinance. And I think I also want to correct some of what I said regarding how the signs are illuminated. The canopy signs cannot be halo lit. They will be internally illuminated. The 39W would be internally illuminated. And the wall-mounted sign facing Collins to the west would also be internally illuminated. Right.
And we'll have our architect go through all that in detail as well. Sorry. When we actually put the signs up, I think it's going to be easier to see and envision them. Sorry to
Thank-
startle you there, Mr. Klein.
Thank you.
Mr. Lanzafama, I do have a question. A board member had raised a question. We've got testimony from Mr. Natal that we're expecting a staff of 55. We are only signing and designating 34 parking spaces for employees. Can you please describe that or explain the rationale?
Yeah, the thought process around that is when we were told there's 55 potential maximum employees in the building, there's a lot of in and out by the employees, and that the majority of the staff, which we felt would be around the 30 to 40 number, could park along the perimeter of the site at the rear. So there'll be this constant movement of employees in and out. By that, I mean by doctors, the staff that is there on a daily basis from, as was pointed out, from 7 to 8 would be those 34 at the rear of the site. The doctors would tend to park closer to the building because of the need for them to perhaps go to a hospital or go to a different location. So that's the rationale behind not having 55 employee parking spaces.
And it also keeps those additional spaces free for
Exactly.
the patients and
keeps
so
them free
forth,
for
who might not
patients,
otherwise
right.
park there
Right.
with the access
And
sign.
the only, the distinction is that it's the width of the parking stall. So by allowing more parking stalls to be wider at 9 feet, makes it easier for the patients to get in and out of the stalls.
Mike, how do you plan to designate those spaces for?
They would be signed, employee parking only.
So if they park there,
If a patient parks there,
permit or something, no more?
no, it's not going to be by permit because patient staff, the patients will be coming in and out, and they'll want to park as close to the building as possible. They're the most remote spots on the site.
And Mike, those spaces you're talking about are going to be 18 feet by 8.5 feet wide.
Correct. Hairpin striped, and that's what's permitted in your ordinance.
Okay.
And the last question I had for you before we turn it over to the professionals and to the board for questions, somebody from the public had asked general time frame assuming this project is approved, what would you expect from a construction perspective?
The shell of the building and the site work is probably 12 months, and then the finish work in the building's probably another 12 months. And during construction, you know, the question was asked by one of the neighbors, well, how do I get to the post office? We have to be certain to maintain safe access to the back portion of those properties because they have easement rights. So the area would be cordoned off with fencing, construction fencing, so that the building itself and a sufficient area for support by the contractors so they can park their vehicles. The rest of the parking lot would be accessible to the rear of the post office and the other retail users.
Thank you.
Any questions from our professionals?
Lee Klein, I'm the board's traffic engineer. Could I get a copy, a PDF of the two turning templates, the fire truck
Sure,
and the?
yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen that before.
Yep.
All right.
And Chairman, if I may, the one thing I just want to remind the board, I want to remind the public as well, landscaping and lighting is going to be our next witness.
Okay.
Ryan Conway is going to testify, so I'm sure people saw green and so forth that have landscaping questions. We can just hold them until Mr. Conway's testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick question. So I think most of my comments were addressed as part of testimony or revised plans. A couple minor details, obviously, we'll have to work through. Can you just get me also the breakdown of the water and sewer so I can
Yeah,
review
sure.
that with the water and sewer department?
Yep.
And then obviously, any new utilities, disconnects, we have to work through with the utility companies.
Correct.
To do that. And then I guess you just mentioned access to I think that's 25 West Northfield. The
Correct.
property there. As part of a condition, maybe they provide schematics with the contractors and how that's maintained safely.
Sure, we
and stuff like
can, we
that.
can certainly develop a construction access plan for you. Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did.
Okay.
Sorry. So on the site plan, can you mark the site distance? Right now, I think you just have dashed lines. You don't have the actual number, or do you?
Oh, on the site triangle?
Yeah, on the site
Oh,
triangle, I'm
okay.
sorry, site-
Yeah, we
yeah,
can
site
identify that. Sure.
Just two questions, Michael. One,
Yes,
you're
Nick.
not proposing any exterior directory signage?
No.
Okay. The second thing is, perhaps, next meeting, which I think will lead to, you can kind of discuss how you're going to kind of delineate the parking spaces that'll be dedicated, that'll be exclusive to the post office in terms of what kind of signage and something that
Yeah,
they're
we've
in
been.
agreement with.
Right. We've been toying around with either pavement markings or signs. We haven't made a final decision.
And I'm
but
assuming they're going to have a say in that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, questions?
Yes, Mr. Klein.
Hello, Mr. Lanzafama. You talked about increasing the setback of parking from the adjacent homes.
That's correct.
What else can be done to protect them, for instance, from headlights, fumes from vehicles?
So what we are proposing as part of the design concept is a solid 6-foot-high PVC fence that would be constructed along our common boundary that would run from Collins all the way down to Harrison. You can see it on the exhibit here, the line with the squares. I haven't been able to make my cursor bigger, Mr. Lewis. So, but it's the area that you can see. I'll just expand it. And you can see the line with the squares in it. It's going to supplement that barrier that would exist there. And you'll hear from Mr. Conway shortly about the landscaping that we're proposing in that area as well.
At some locations, there's been agreement that those parking areas would require the vehicles to be backed in so that there would be no light going towards the residences. I know that there will be some hours in the course of the year when it will be dark, even at the earlier hours of closing.
I'm not aware of such an agreement, or an imposition that was placed on this property.
It has not been on this property.
I thought you were saying
No.
it was imposed on the,
No.
on the sports club there. I don't think that's necessary, given the solid PVC fencing.
So in your opinion, head-in parking would still work?
Yes.
Okay. How many van accessible spaces are included in the 8?
We have two van accessible spaces.
In the diagram that you had up for a while, was a walkway from the handicapped spaces into the building, was there not?
Yes, you can see here,
And what is the width of that?
the width of the sidewalk is 5 feet.
Is there any overhang for that parking?
Yeah, there would be. The handicap signs that identify the parking stalls are actually bollards. The post is a bollard. So that would be set back to 2 feet, and that still leaves us 3 feet of access behind them. If we need to make the sidewalks 6 feet, we still have the ability to do that as well.
And you said there would be 10 EV stations.
That's correct.
Would there be make-ready stations provided for?
I'm sorry.
Would there be make-ready stations provided for in the
We're going
planning?
to put them all in now.
Michael, did I hear you say that, thank you, that the employee parking strip would be pinstripe?
Hairpin striping,
Hairpin
that's
stripe?
correct. That helps
Yeah, it gives
direct
you a
the
little
vehicle.
more width.
You're right.
Thank you.
You mentioned a number of signs. If somebody's coming in by car from Northfield for the first time, how do they know to turn into the driveway?
Well, the sign, the first direction that we need to give them, since there's no driveway accessing this property from Northfield, we have to make them realize they have to turn on Collins. That's the reason for the monument sign out at the intersection. I was going to get into that testimony when I came back as the planner. But that's the rationale behind that. So that's to identify that this is the location, this is Summit Health. And with the signage on the building, it helps someone clearly understand that this is their destination. And then with the driveway clearly at the edge of the building, it seems obvious to us that you'll be able to.
So you're
easily-
assuming that instinctively everybody will understand they should turn there?
That's our thought.
And there's a no access or no entrance sign at the bottom of the Northfield driveway.
That is correct.
And you would have a prohibition of exiting to the left out of that driveway?
Correct. The little box with the R that you see there is no right turn only, excuse me.
I think you showed sidewalks on Collins and on Northfield,
That's correct.
and what would be the materials and the width of those sidewalks?
Those would be concrete 5 feet wide.
And you talked about a solid fence, PVC,
Correct.
along the property line. Have you had a decision as to what the color of that would be, considering that you're up against homes?
Right now, we're looking at white, but, we're open to suggestions. If there's more of a gray tone or a beige tone desired, we can certainly do that as well.
We were thinking earth tone. Mr. Conway can speak to what an earth tone
Thank
is.
you. Has there been any consideration to an emergency generator?
No.
If you change, I was just
Yeah.
in the same one, if in fact there is a change, you understand the requirements with regard to sound and the location of that.
Exactly.
And the fuel source. So
Understood.
at this moment, there is no generator being considered.
That's correct.
Going to the signage, I don't believe the board has ever considered a canopy and its sign as extending the sign from the building. Canopy is an appropriate piece of the architecture. We have always said that a canopy can have a sign on its face. You do need a variance to have the sign atop the canopy.
Correct.
But I don't think you need a variance from the 15-inch extension requirement.
We ran into this on, I think, the Golan project, and I think that we were asked to secure a variance for that as well. And I could be mistaken, I think in Beacon's memo, they identified it as well.
I don't recall
I
doing
think
that.
just to, to be absolutely certain, belt-in suspenders approach is ask for it, and if we don't need it, that's fine, but we're asking for it.
I hate to say this, but I may be running out of questions.
Say it ain't so.
For you.
For me, okay. That's better.
I think that's it for now.
Okay.
Any questions from any other members of the board?
I have a couple with regard to the handicap spaces and the number.
Okay.
So is 8 what is required by code?
Yes.
Okay. Setting aside 8 as the code for the size of the building, do you feel that that's adequate for the type of building you have here?
Yeah, we looked at that because ADA does require an enhanced requirement for certain medical uses to provide additional handicap spots. But this didn't fall into that category. As Brian had testified initially in describing the use, is strictly doctors' offices. So it functions much like a regular office building. So we felt that this is the appropriate number of handicap spots.
Okay. And what is the protection besides the striping of the ground where the handicap, people who are using the handicap spaces access into the building? Are there any signage? Is there any thought of any, and I hate them, but speed bumps or speed humps to potentially slow cars down that are coming into that area? Because it's right off the driveway from the building, and that would be a concern.
Right. There, what we have is a striped walkway area. You can see that each of the parking stalls has its access area adjacent to it. They would move up onto the sidewalk, come along the sidewalk. There's curbing that protects the area along the sidewalk that's immediately adjacent to the access drive. There's a warning device that tells the pedestrian that they're going to cross an active driveway. And then there's a striped area that would allow them to enter into the main entrance of the building. We do have some no parking signs. We could add some pedestrian warning signs along that driveway to alert motorists that this is a pedestrian crosswalk.
Again, I'm more concerned for the pedestrians
Exactly.
and the people in wheelchairs or
Right.
with walkers that are coming across there from the cars that are entering. It's a pretty short distance from the time they get in there and
Right. So we could put some identification or some warning signs indicating that, this is a pedestrian crosswalk area.
And on the garbage enclosure, that's going to be of the same material
Masonry,
as
same
we-
material as the building with gates that are screened, slatted. We do have a loading area, 10 by 26 loading area alongside of the building for deliveries, and as the representative from Summit Health indicated, there's no tractor trailers coming here. They're just UPS-type vehicles, and this will function perfectly for that need.
Is there a loading zone? Isn't that a requirement too?
In that zone, there's a loading space required.
Which is
It's right here. The hatched area is
Okay.
10 by 26 loading area.
That's all I have, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one clarification I can use, I need. Going back to the activity in the building and the fact that there would only be doctor's offices, does that mean that there wouldn't be any physical therapy?
In this facility, there will be no physical therapy.
Thank you.
Since you mentioned the loading space, can you provide a vehicle turning template of the proper size vehicle to
I
access that?
did not. I could do that
Could you
for
do
you.
that? Yeah, for next
Surely.
time, thanks.
Hi,
Name, address, and you are not represented by counsel?
I am not. Sure, Daniel Dubinet, and the address is 56 Collingwood Terrace. I'm sorry, Collingwood Avenue. Dubinet, D-U-B-I-N-E-T-T. Yeah, I've been here before. Yes, I'm a resident on Collingwood Avenue, and I had a question that maybe beyond the parking and the drainage and the grading, but when I look at the zoning map of Livingston, it shows that most of the property, or half the property, is located in R4. So I guess, Michael, could you tell me a little history on how it's designated as a B, but when I look at the zoning map, it's R4?
The zone was amended. As you know, the master plan had indicated the elimination or the attempt to eliminate as many split zone lots as possible within the community. This was one of those parcels that was split zoned. And it was the council's decision to change it to all B zone.
So the map wasn't.
The map probably wasn't
Okay.
updated yet.
All right, that's helpful, because it seemed like, it's an existing non-conforming use that's been there forever, and maybe they created this very large buffer to Harrison for a reason, like, okay, you can have parking, but let's leave a very large buffer for Harrison. So obviously for the neighbors and the neighborhood, we're losing that buffer. And so I guess having not an issue with the use, and I think it's a great use, and I think it's a beautiful building, and I think the only thing that certainly I'm concerned about is, the drainage. So existing goes to, the whole parking lot drains to Northfield. So
But
now-
there is a section of it that does sheet flow towards West
Yeah, a
Harrison.
small section goes to Harrison, dumps onto the green, but now all of a sudden, because I live on Collingwood Avenue, we get a lot of water, and during a storm, our inlets get overflowed. So now we're taking this entire building.
No,
No.
the building is still going out to Northfield.
Oh, good, so all the
And,
downspouts.
and, yep, all the downspouts will be connected to the Northfield storm source system. And the majority of the parking lot goes towards Collins Terrace, which then turns and drains towards Northfield. So it's only about, I would say, probably about 30% of the parking lot that actually sheets flows towards the swale, the bioswale.
Okay, that's good news. And then I guess, really quickly, if you could show us how the grade will change, because we kind of, I think you might have glossed over that.
If you want to wait till the next witness, Mr. Conway has done a site section that he'll be sharing with the board and the neighbors.
Yeah, because we were definitely concerned about how you get, because to protect us, obviously landscaping would be awesome along
Right.
Collins Terrace, along Harrison. It doesn't seem like we have enough left over to create anything significant in terms of landscape, so I'll wait on that. Insignificant, I guess we talked about the building height not needing a variance,
Correct.
but I think the architectural plans we'll get to later show a little bit different numbers, not by bunch. So as long as, we'll get to that later. Signage, I'd like to see the architecturals to be able to have any thoughts on that. But yeah, so we'll get to the grading with another expert.
Correct, you'll see the site section.
Okay, because from your plans, it looks like some of the grade.
Well, we can take a look at that.
Yeah, it looks like it's close to the property line, if not off the property line.
Yeah, what you're seeing here is the creation of the swale. The bioswale exists right along the very edge of the parking lot through here, right in through this area here is the bioswale, which is about a foot or so below the level of the parking lot. The grade then comes up to a top of a berm that's about a foot and a half to 2 feet above the parking lot. And then the grade drops off at a 3-to-1 slope towards the curb line of Harrison.
Yes, I was just curious, because I know in residential, we have to keep 5 feet away. Whenever we make a change to grades, we have to maintain the first 5 feet, and then we could manipulate the grades? Is it different for
It's different for commercial.
commercial? So we can go right away?
Yes.
Yeah, so it seems like maybe when we look at the landscaping that with the steep slope, well, I don't know if it is a steep slope, but with the slope, it might be hard to landscape significantly. And I think that's the concern of the neighbors is like, how do we limit the light pollution? How do we go from we had this.
Well, remember on top, we have the berm that we've created just beyond the swale. And then on top of that berm, we're going to have a 6-foot solid fence. And then we have evergreen plantings proposed along the street as well.
Right, where's the fence?
6 foot high.
No, where is it on the grading?
It is not shown on the grading, but it's on the site plan. Let me go back to the.
It looks like it's close to the
You
street.
can see it, you can see it. The
Yeah, I see the fence
line
on
with the squares. You're running all along Harrison.
Right, so it doesn't seem like quite enough room for some landscaping, especially with the slope, but we'll get to that. Because I think that's obviously the community's concern is, okay, well, we had this dead-end street, and all of a sudden, we're going to see something different, which different's okay, but what could we do? And could the bioswale go somewhere else? Or can it be underground, underneath the parking lot?
Well, we have underground storage. The bioswale intercepts that first flush. The larger storms overflow into a series of inlets that go into 24-inch diameter pipes, 260 feet long each, with a stone bed, and that allows water to percolate back into the ground. And then any overflow goes out towards
The overflow will be
West
connected
Harrison.
to the underground.
Correct.
Right, yeah, I was just thinking, just because I know that for the neighbors is something that, obviously, we're used to seeing 70 feet or so of green. Now we're going to come awfully close to the street, and what does that all look
Understood.
like? And how could we make that great for everybody?
Understood.
And
And
particularly, I guess.
I
there's
think
a-
you'll be pleased with what you see with Mr. Conway's plan.
Parking on Collins Terrace, let's say there's not enough parking in the parking lot. Are people allowed to park on Collins Terrace?
No.
No. Okay, that's good, too. Let me see if I have any more. That's good, thank you, Michael.
Anytime, Dan.
Thanks.
Yeah, hi, Dennis Fisher, 10 Collins Terrace. I spoke earlier, you mentioned at the very beginning that the current driveway from Northfield was an ingress, one-way, and you were going to expand that? Is
No.
there any?
No.
So that's going to stay as is there any thought to?
We're going to reverse the direction. It's going to be the exact same driveway. Instead of being an entry into the site, it's going to be an exit from the site.
How would you compare the volume of traffic that would be using that versus the entrance?
I would defer to my traffic engineer, our traffic engineer.
Okay. Is there any way of adjusting so that there's more traffic that would move through that exit as opposed to using Collins Terrace, which is directly across the street from where I live?
Right. Mr. Maltz is going to handle the traffic, and
If you can just
he
hold
may
back until
have
we
done
get
an
to our traffic
analysis.
engineer.
Okay, and the lighting is going to be addressed too? That's a very big question too.
Yeah,
about-
landscaping and lighting is gonna be Mr.
Thank you.
Conway next up.
My name is Andrew Cubillo. Oh. Not represented. My name is Andrew Cubillos, Cubillos, and I live at 22 West Harrison Place. I just have a few questions that I would like to pose, and if they're going to be addressed by an expert coming up, just let me know.
I will.
So my first question is, what is the rule for changing the grade next to a property line?
You can't exceed a rate of change of more than 3 to 1. You want to keep the slope at a flat enough slope that it doesn't cause erosion.
Okay.
And we've maintained that in our design.
And my next question is, for the trash area, how close will it be located to my property line?
You're on West Harrison?
22 West Harrison Place, so our backyard is adjacent to the parking lot.
Oh, I see, okay. So that is from the back property corner, it's 16.3 feet. You can see that, 16.3 feet, do you see that? Right there.
And then my next question is, how close to the West Harrison curb will the parking lot be extended to?
I'm sorry, to what?
How close to the West Harrison curb will the
Oh, to
parking
the
lot be
curb?
extended to?
Let's see, at its closest point, it'd probably be about 35 feet.
And then my next question is, the plans that were shared with us showed a retaining wall adjacent to the property line of 22 West Harrison Place. Please elaborate the type, size, and location of the retaining wall.
The retaining wall you can see here is the line that's a dashed line that you see. That's 5 feet off the property line, and it's going to be 3 feet high. It's a modular block wall that would be constructed, and then atop that would be the solid 6-foot-high PVC fence.
And then my last question is, could you describe again the parking lot variances that you are requiring?
Certainly. We're asking for relief on 140 of the 230 spaces as to the size of the parking stall. If you look at the plan, you see the dimension 18 feet for the overall depth of the parking stall. Under the municipal ordinance, it's supposed to be 9 by 20. Turns out that the norm is 9 by 18 these days. What I started to refer to earlier in my testimony was the residential site improvement standards, which is a statewide document, and they all recommend 9 by 18 parking stalls. And it's not unusual throughout the state to have stalls of 18 feet in depth as opposed to 20. And what it does, the benefit of it obviously is to reduce the amount of impervious area that you would need to support a parking field of 130 cars. The second variance that we are seeking is the number of parking stalls. We're required to have 266 parking stalls due to the 10-car reduction allowed under the state mandate that we provide EV charging stations. And we're proposing 230, so we're seeking a 36-car parking variance. The other variance that we are seeking as it relates to setback of parking spaces to the adjoining properties, the residential properties. You can see the 4 parking stalls that are turned away from the property line are located 16.5 feet from the property line, and the existing parking lot is located 15.51 feet. So we're actually pulling the parking lot a foot or so away from your property.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is William, W-I-L-I-N, and I live in 19 Cornerstone.
Mr. Lin lives in this house right adjacent
yeah.
to our site.
Right.
Which,
So,
which
okay, so according to your saying, you're gonna install like 8 to 10 EV charging along my fence, or your fence around my house?
That's correct.
Yeah, I gonna strongly oppose that, because as we all know, the EV, the battery is not perfect yet. So sometimes it can cause a fire. So, and those chargers are gonna stay there permanently. So if there one single time accident happen, it's gonna bring a great disaster to my house and to whole area. So we should not leave any chance to let those things happen. And in my opinion, you should move the charger to in the middle of the parking lot, so to give the firefighter, if something happen, enough buffer room to take care of fire.
That's,
about the safety of having
Yeah.
those EV chargers there, and whether there is a risk of fire as a result of having those chargers in that location. I think that's the question.
yes, well, we'll take it up with the fire code official and the fire chief and see if there is concern. If you notice, the setback of the parking area from your property line is nearly 19 feet. And then in addition to that, you have the setback of your house was probably another 8 or 10 feet. So there's a significant setback from your house
But
to the
there's
vehicle
a
park.
tree and landscaping over there. So if
Correct.
there's fire, easily cause a fire, cause a tree getting fire. And the tree can cause a house getting fire. So it's a great concern, great safety
We'll
concern.
take it up with the fire code official. This is a state mandate requirement that we provide EV charging stations on a site. Is it possible to put them in other locations? Perhaps, we could look at moving some of them, but the idea is to keep them grouped together for ease of running the conduit to them and the electrical service to them, so that you have them located in one particular locale. So we can certainly take a look at it for you, but.
Yes.
we
Mr.
should-
Lonzafame, is there actually an encroachment?
Yeah, there's a
onto,
significant
onto-
encroachment by the neighbor.
Onto the 39,
Yeah,
associated with that
his
property?
driveway is like 13 feet onto our property. So,
and just so the board is aware, we do have an encroachment. It was not our intention to require our neighbor to remove that encroachment from the property as per this proposed
Well,
plan.
thank you for bringing that up and letting us know. But I think I have a question as to those EV chargers. I know we have to have them by law, but they're not necessarily required to be in that specific location, correct?
no, but our electric service and coming into the building is going to be on this corner of the building. You can't see it.
I've often been heard said that good fences make good neighbors, and sometimes if neighbors are asking for certain concessions, it would be nice
We
to look
did
at
put
them.
We do have a new fence, but yeah, we can certainly look at moving them around, shifting them around a little bit. It's certainly not the
I
end
mean,
of
it's
the
been
world.
done with other big projects like this to make
But I
some of the
may not be
neighbors
able to move all
feel
of
at
them.
ease.
I may not be able to move all of them. I could probably move some, but not all of them.
Thank you.
As long as we're talking about the EV stations, has any consideration been given to avoiding people coming in and using those stations at night when the facility is closed?
We can sign against that. I'm sure there's got to be a way where we can restrict that. I imagine a lot of places are having that problem.
Can they not be put on a timing system?
Yeah, there could be something that turns it off at night so that it can't be used overnight, sure.
Other questions?
Yes, like I said before, you have a cleaning service, so can you post some sign, warning sign for people?
Excuse me, we're having trouble hearing multiple people.
Sorry.
Thank
so,
you.
I have a recommend, so you have a cleaning service for the area, right? So can you post some warning sign for people no littering or on, like those sign on the fence So,
I couldn't understand you, I'm
You
sorry.
said no littering signs?
yeah,
Littering or
yeah,
littering?
littering, no, people
Littering.
dump garbage.
Don't-
Yeah.
I think the testimony was that they have porters that would walk the site twice a day and pick up any debris. I'm sure we could put up a few no littering signs.
Okay, so another concern is, do you install any security camera on the parking lot to?
I'm sorry, can you have to repeat?
Security cameras in the parking
Security
lot, I think
cameras,
was the
our
question.
architect will speak to that.
Okay.
Okay. That's it. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody who has not testified yet or asked questions, go ahead, sir.
Good evening.
I was going to say
Sure.
something. The tone and tenor in which we're addressing the residents seems to be a little bit strong when they're just simply here to address their concerns. They live here. And we're certainly here listening to your application, but the residents deserve a level of being heard and just being addressed in a manner that is appropriate. They do live here, they pay their taxes, and they're just here like any citizen wanting to be heard. Thank you.
Okay, agreed.
Thank you. My name is Edward Mina, M-I-N-A. I am a resident of 19 West Harrison Place. That is the last house on the cul-de-sac. I did have a question about your projection. So the first thing I was curious specifically about was the biosphere. So I just wanted to clarify that there was going to be a 100-year flood projection for that specific area?
Yes, it's designed to handle all storms, the 2, 10, and 100-year storm, and it's designed to properly convey and control the runoff from that area of the parking lot.
Okay, thank you. And so I was curious, based on specifically the 100-year portion, is that based on 100-year projection, or is that based on historical past data?
Well, the stormwater runoff calculations that we used are based upon rainfall events that have been determined statistically over about 100 years. The state of New Jersey, at the time we made this application, was using 8.7 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period to classify that as a 100-year storm. In other words, a 100-year storm is a storm that has a 1% chance of occurring during any 1 year.
Thank you. And so with that, I was wondering if there was any considerations with climate change, as climate change has and is already increasing annual precipitation. NJDEP has released data that it's
Correct.
about 11%. And so it is likely that you could have multiple 100-year events in a short amount of time, and especially in an area that may have considerations towards multiple electric vehicles that are several tons with multiple batteries. So the question is, has there been considerations into climate change, which has been increasing exponentially?
As of July 17th of this year, the DEP implemented new numbers, new values for the rainfall event. So that 8.7-inch number did increase. However, we were submitted prior to that going into effect, so we're adhering to that. I did have my staff take a quick look at larger storms, and the system can handle larger storms. We can go back and take a second look at it and use some of the new numbers that were instituted by the DEP as of July 17th and see how those numbers compare to what we've generated using the older rainfall events. Be happy to do that for you.
Yes, I appreciate that just for the considerations. And I guess my last question is, aside from the biosphere, are there any other considerations for dealing with drainage, like things like permeable pavement, for example?
We didn't employ permeable pavement. Porous pavement tends to clog up over time. It's very difficult to maintain. That's why we thought we'd use the bioswale approach, where we sheet flow the water as opposed to collecting it in catch basins and in piping systems. So the sheet flow allows longer time for the water, once it hits the ground, to reach the outfall device. So by sheet flowing the water into the bioswale, it allows for cleansing of that water column through the perforated, or to the porous soil that we're using to line the bioswale. And then it goes into the storage pipes underneath, which are against the permeable soils that exist on the site. So we did have a perk rate of 1 inch per hour. It's not super great, but it allows for groundwater recharge. So it will reduce the volume of runoff to some extent as a result of taking advantage of that more permeable material subsurface. So we're getting the runoff back to the permeable soils, just like it was before it was paved. That water that did come off the portion of the parking lot and fell into that wooded area that was along West Harrison would percolate into the ground. Well, we've done it through the bioswale. We've gotten that water back against that permeable soil.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up for that one more time, so in the situation of the bioswale, is there any plans for maintenance over time? For
Yes, we have a maintenance manual that we prepared that has to be a recorded document that runs with the land, so the property owner knows what he has to do, when he has to do it. And he has to submit documentations to the engineering and building department that he is maintaining the swale.
Is there a certain time period or frequency that it needs to occur?
It varies. It depends on, usually it's after a major storm event, depending upon when that major storm event occurs. It's for a minimum of twice a year. You're going to be inspecting the control structure, the condition of the plant material in the bioswale, and that all has to be updated and upgraded as time goes on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm a resident of 30 Cottonwood Avenue. My name is Mori Ma, last name M.A. I have a question about EV supercharge. So who can use those? They are open to the public, right? Everybody can
No.
use it? No?
They're open to the patients of the building. They're open to the doctors and the staff.
Okay, so 10 of them, do you think it's overbuilt?
No, that's required by the state. 4% of the
mandated
parking
by
lot.
law?
Mandated by law. It's not even a zoning ordinance.
Okay.
It's a state law.
Will there be a limitation on how long a car can charge?
It's a good question. I don't know.
It's an enforcement issue, I understand that. Who's going to be looking at this? I'm just-
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
So they are not open to public?
That's correct.
If I have a EV car, I cannot use it?
That's, unless you're a patient of the facility. If you're a patient of
Right,
the facility, you drive there with your electric car, you
Okay.
can park there.
Okay, so my point is actually, it's about open to the public, so that, okay, that's fine. So my next question or suggestion is, if you can take a consideration of installing those surveillance camera for the security purpose, for monitoring the traffic, so, it will help us to understand where what's to comes in, right? for the
I don't
security.
quite understand your question.
My question is, no, my suggestion is not my question. My suggestion is if you can install surveillance camera.
Oh, I see. To
around
monitor what's
the
going
parking
on
lot.
there. I see. We can
That
take it under
Jen also
consideration,
mentioned
certainly.
here, right?
We can certainly take it under consideration, absolutely.
Right, okay. So my last question is there any chemical or biomaterial stored inside the building?
I couldn't answer that question. I
So,
don't know.
Okay, when the storm comes in, when worst comes to worst, the building, it could collapse. So any risk, if you store the chemical by all material, any risk you have evaluated?
I think what you're saying, you're asking me, is there any hazardous material stored in the building?
Right.
And if so, how's it controlled?
No. If the storm comes in, damage the building,
If what comes in?
storm.
If a storm
A
comes
storm.
in and damages the building
That,
and there's
yeah,
a
damage the
collapse.
building,
It's not in a
is it
floodplain.
possible for those chemicals exposed outside?
No, the building's not in a floodplain, it's not subject to flood hazard. It's well above any flood elevation that could occur. So it's not gonna be a problem, and it's my understanding.
But have you evaluated?
Have I what?
Evaluated?
Chairman, can I just actually have Mr. Natal? He can speak to operations and probably
Okay.
address
All right.
what would be stored in the building.
And you're still under oath.
In this type of facility, there's no hazardous chemicals. The only chemicals that would be in this facility are your general housekeeping.
Okay, that's what I want to hear.
Other than that, there's no abnormal chemicals being stored.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just general housekeeping supplies.
Yeah, Michael, right?
Michael?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Before another member of the public, can I just ask, because it pertains to the question with regard to is there any intent to charge for the EV stations, or is the intent to have them free?
We'll circle back to you on that, Mr. Diner. We provided 10 EV spaces as a result of the state mandate, and but it's a.
You're certainly welcome to do either. I was just curious if you had an intent.
We don't intend to charge for them. They'll be free for people that are coming into the facility.
Where it's located, though, the public's going to come. I'm just going to, and somehow during the day, they're going to come.
Like, maybe when,
And maybe they charge and then validate upstairs or at the doctor's office.
or when, or just open during the hours of the facility. That's something for you guys to
Yeah, just,
figure out.
just an idea, yeah.
That's something for you guys to figure out. Counsel?
Hello, sir. I just wanted to ask about the refuse area. The property line of West Harrison Place, it seems rather close to where the refuse area is, and where it is currently is between the two buildings there. So what you guys are proposing in this is to move it back towards the houses, instead of where it is right now, between the buildings, correct?
That's correct.
Because on Harrison Place, there already is issues from the commercial properties that are on Livingston Ave. There's rodent problem. There's all sorts of issues from the refuse coming onto Harrison Place. I think there is a concern as if you're putting more refuse closer to Harrison Place, is there another option for you, like where it is now, that could less detriment the residents that are already living there?
West, you're talking about the commercial properties along the bottom of this exhibit.
Correct.
So our location is here, and it was here. I don't see that as being that much closer to Harrison. It's pretty.
It's actually a
Here's
residence, pretty much
where
their
it is
backyard.
proposed, and it was here.
Right, so where it is currently is between the buildings,
Right.
not next to any of the homes.
Well, it actually rolled, they're in rollers, and
And
they're not contained, so here.
Well, that is
you have
where
a
it is.
You have a contained system, masonry walls and a solid fence. So right now, it's over in this area here,
Right,
and we're
not next to any of the
proposing here.
homes. And this proposal is to move it
Not
towards
closer
the
to
homes.
West Harrison.
Oh,
West
okay.
Harrison is here.
So on Collins Terrace, so behind the homes on Collins Terrace.
Yes, it is closer to these two lots, yes, you're absolutely correct.
Okay, so there isn't an option to move it back to where it is now between the buildings?
No, it didn't work there. It's too difficult for truck traffic to get to it. It just didn't work out. This allowed us to have a good location that met the ordinance standards and still made it very accessible for the truck and minimize truck movements to get into and out of the site.
And you testified earlier that we can, it might have been Mr. Natal, the timing for the waste trucks to come in will be regulated.
Correct, that was the testimony.
Okay. And I had a question about the bioswale.
Yes, ma'am.
You have it on the plans, it's on the site.
That dark green line you see.
Okay, the dark green line, which is on West Harrison Place.
Mhm.
Essentially, that'll be under the dozen or so 100-year-old trees that are there now, right? Those will be taken out and that
That's
will be
correct.
placed there instead?
That's correct.
Okay. And that will be maintained by Summit Medical or the owners of the property?
Well, according to the testimony, it would be Summit Medical as a tenant.
Okay. And another question is regarding, you mentioned there would be a large internally illuminated sign placed on Collins Terrace,
Well,
facing
it's
Collins
on-
Terrace
It's on the top of the building, and you'll see it when the architect testifies and shows you the facade.
Okay.
It's located right at the very corner of the building, right in this location. It's
So it's
mounted
at
on the
the
building.
top of the building, not in
Correct.
the living room windows of the
That is
residence?
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I just have a few more questions.
Sure.
So, 'cause
Yeah.
my name is Andrew Cubillos,
And again, address?
22 West Harrison Place.
And you or the household is not being represented by the attorney, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So you said that there's a fence that's going down towards to the curb. And my question is, are fences allowed on front yards in Livingston?
In residential zones, they are allowed, but they have to be 50% open, and then they have to be no more than 4 feet high in the front yard. In this particular case, it's a commercial zone, so it is permitted.
But it is bordering our property, so it's in our
It's
front
acro-
yard,
it's
so how
across-
is that going to work
It's across
out?
the street from the West Harrison lots, is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to my property because,
Oh, that's right, you're this homeowner here. I'm sorry.
correct.
Yeah, this is permitted under the code.
Even if it's a commercial property that is bordering a residential property, because then that fence
Yes.
is going to be on my front yard.
No, it's not. It's on
Side.
our property. You
It's
can see
going to be bordering the
solid-
side of
the
our front
solid-
yard.
The solid dark line you see is the boundary line between our properties. So the fence is going to be set off quite a ways from your property line and then follows parallel to the parking area. So there's this whole open area here that's going to leave that accessible and visible for you. It's not going to be enclosing your front yard, not in any way.
And my second question and this is referring back to, you said there were going to be porters coming out twice a day to clean any garbage or litter in the parking lot. What happens to garbage that is thrown over our fence? Because we've been living here for over 22 years, and that has been a consistent problem, people throwing litter onto our backyard. How are they gonna clean that up?
Well, we had agreed to put no littering signs up. I don't know.
But how is that, I don't know how that's gonna help, though. How are you going
I
to,
don't know
how are you
either.
going to address people throwing litter into our backyard? I mean, so when I was, I ran around barefoot when I was a kid, and we've had things like syringes, empty steroid bottles thrown into our property, how are you going to address any type of trash being thrown into our property? Because are the porters going to have to come onto our property to pick that up because that's coming from your property?
You'll have to contact the property owner in Summit Health, and they'll have to figure out a way to help you in getting rid of that trash. I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay, but I just want to let you know that's going to be very problematic going forward. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the public or the board?
Yeah, just a quick question. The fence what is the height of the fence that's
6
going to
feet,
go up?
6 feet, 6 feet.
6 feet. And what's there now?
There's no fence along Harrison. There is a fence along the adjoining property. I believe it's a board-on-board fence or a stockade-type fence, I believe.
All right, so the area where the gentleman that was just asking
4 feet.
questions.
4 feet.
There is no fence there now?
There's no fence along the street frontage, no.
Okay, and there now will be?
There will be.
And the height of that fence will
6
be?
feet.
6 feet.
Correct.
And that fence is going to go past the garbage, the new
Yes.
garbage enclosure?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Where will snowplow and store snow?
Yeah, there's plenty of room along the periphery of the property. You can see on what I have up on the exhibit, the green area. It could easily be stockpiled in that area. You have an area alongside the edge of the parking lot, throughout the site where you could stockpile the snow removed.
Will that cause the loss of any parking spaces?
No, no.
One more question.
Mhm.
You're ready, this will be your third time, so one more. Okay, is there, nothing else from the board, is there, yes?
Okay, so my name is Dr. Sarah Mina. I live in 19 West Harrison, and I've been living there for 20 years. I'm here to represent my brother and my father. We live next to Calabria's, and they have rats that come from the garbage towards our house and to our neighbor's house. I called this township.
Is there?
No one did
yeah,
anything.
So at the end?
Are you gonna help us?
So it's a couple different issues.
The
Okay,
garbage.
so it's a couple different issues. So, okay. So there are a couple of different issues.
Mhm.
Number one, you have an existing problem that's going on.
Yes.
Okay, we have, our town manager is here, so he can take your information.
I called them, no one did
If we can
anything.
if we can stop shouting from the audience, please. Okay, it makes it difficult to hear and makes it difficult to follow.
Mhm.
So, sir, please.
Okay.
Sir, please. Thank you. So we have our town manager here.
By the way,
So number one, if you can give him that information, so let's break it down to a couple of issues. Number one, you have an existing problem going on now. Okay, so let's address that right. So let's address that first. Okay, number two, the question is, I think, will this, the way this is set up, will it exacerbate that, or exacerbate or create any problem? So I think that's your question as to this testimony. As to what's going on now, I think that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, especially biohazards. So I am a
okay.
scientist, I work in a lab, I understand the blood you take from patients, I understand the biohazards, I understand the effects on the environment.
Okay, so let's just deal with getting it corrected.
Okay.
So first, our town manager is here, and he's heard you, and he'll take your information, and he'll follow up and, deal with that.
Thank you
Now-
very much, but I also addressed this issue to the Essex community, to Essex County, and they have done nothing.
Okay, so
And I have addressed the noise.
Okay, this
too.
is a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
Okay, so
but
let's,
I foresee this being a
right, so
problem.
let's just deal with that. Go ahead.
Chairman, if I may, call back Mr. Natal, because I think he can also discuss just the nature of what we would expect in that dumpster. This is not a facility that's going to have food service, it's not going to have a cafe with food prep, and Mr. Natal.
Yeah, just to address your concern, so the refuge area that we have there is not the same as a restaurant, right? So a restaurant has a total amount of food that's gonna go into it. As part of our program, we have a pest management control system vendor that comes in and does outside and inside the building, generally on a weekly. Some facilities are on a monthly. Something like this would probably be every week, where they would set traps outside. As a medical facility, I don't have any rats anywhere at any of our facilities. If there was to be a rat problem, we've had, infestation issues. Our pest management company gets brought right in to address it. They set the baits, they set the traps. But the garbage that is going into this particular dumpster, it's really just dry goods. It's, the lunch, leftover lunch from the staff. It's not a full restaurant toss out. It's a little bit different. But I can assure you that we have a pest control vendor for every single one of our facilities that does, the pest management, both inside and outside. And that includes setting traps around the refuge and the dumpsters. Baited traps for rodents to make sure that there's no infestation issues. So I can assure you that when you were talking about biohazard, no biohazard leaves the facility at all. No biohazard goes into that dumpster. No biohazard leaves the front door. It goes into a biohazard waste storage room, which is inside the facility. It's red boxed. It's either yellow or red bagged. It goes in there, syringes. It gets picked up. Our vendor is Sharps is the name of the vendor, okay? They come in at our, set routine once a week, once a month, every other month, whatever the volume is, whenever that room fills up. We'll set that determination up. They'll come in, they take the biohazard directly from the biohazard room. It gets, they itinerary it, they itemize it. They wrap the boxes get duct taped. A manifest gets produced before it leaves the facility so that they know exactly how much bio-waste is in each box, what is going out, and then our representatives at the facility have to sign off on the manifest. It then goes directly to the truck and to an incineration facility in Pennsylvania. Once it's incinerated, we get a return manifest to confirm that the bio-waste has been incinerated. So that's the process, and that's the vendor that we use. So there is no concern whatsoever about biohazardous materials being thrown over fences into the parking lot or anything of that nature. I don't have any issues at 900 facilities across the country that rises to that level of concern. And if there was, we would address it operationally immediately.
Yes, thank you. And I understand you can maintain it because it's your building, but what about your employees that dump stuff down the drain that's biohazard, or put a sharps container in the garbage, a sharp needle in the garbage? Is there going to be someone that's going to be maintaining that?
So we have a risk management program,
Okay.
which does training annually. We have to do OSHA training,
Right,
bloodborne pathogen,
Right.
and sharps training.
Okay.
And all the employees who deal with this stuff, right down to the housekeepers, are trained annually. How to handle biomedical waste, how to handle sharps, to ensure that when a sharps container is overfilled, not to keep putting the syringes in, it's got to be removed. How not to get a needle stick. If there is an incident with an employee, a lot of people in the lab, once in a while, they use the butterfly needles, they get a needle stick, they have to go to our risk management department, and they get retrained. Unfortunately, they also have to be tested for 6 months to their detriment, so usually they don't stick themselves again. But to answer your question, we don't have employees just throwing needles out.
but it does happen.
It can happen,
Accidents happen.
absolutely. No, absolutely. We've had needles mistakenly tossed into a garbage can. Happens on occasion. Can I tell you that it will never, ever happen? Of course not. Can one needle end up in a garbage can? Absolutely. But there is a robust training program to ensure that that does not happen. And if it does happen, it is really, really rare. And it's identified, and retraining is taking place. So it's very rare. But sure, it can happen.
Sure. Thank you for maintaining that, because I know I work in the lab, and just today, someone dumped something down the sink that they're not supposed to. So thank you for maintaining that and staying on top of it with your training. I do have a question about the green biosol. How close is it? So I live in that curve, and a lot of kids come and play in that corner, a lot. And some of them are here, and I have my niece and nephew that come play. Are you gonna attract, is it gonna attract mosquitoes? Is it gonna attract, because it's already like a curve. Is it gonna really be maintained? Because actually, that grass was growing so high, I had to call again the town to bring someone to clean and maintain the grass, because it was so high that when we crossed to go to the train, it was like literally up to me, I'm short. So are you really gonna build, what material, first of all? You said sand, and what was the other material? Are you gonna use good materials, or are you guys gonna cut the cost in that, like, whatever, we'll give them, they're just a bunch of, neighbors. Are you really gonna use good materials, and are you really gonna take care of it every year? Because I know the old tenants did not, and I had to call the township to find out who owned that area, and they thankfully come and maintain it. So
Yeah.
that's like a big problem, because as an auntie, I wanna make sure.
So
I'm
so
there.
let's get to the question. So the question is,
Okay,
what's going to be?
so that's a very important question, not only for me, for those who have kids and come play there.
Okay, so to answer your question about maintenance, maintenance is paramount. In any design of best management practices, drainage control structures have to be maintained. That's why the state law and the municipal ordinances require us to actually prepare a maintenance manual that's submitted to the engineering staff, reviewed and approved as part of our application. It then gets recorded at the county courthouse, attached to the property like a deed restriction, so that any property owner or tenant that occupies that space knows his obligation. And the municipality requires that the property owner or tenant submit records to their engineering department showing maintenance of the facility. And if it's not done, then the township can enforce it and make them maintain it to the proper standard. So that's very important. The material used, it's a sand soil mixture that allows water to percolate through there very rapidly, but slow enough that it pulls out any contaminants that might be in the parking area, such as salts and things of that sort, used to maintain the parking lot in the winter months. And so the water moves through that material very quickly, so there's no standing water, no opportunity for mosquitoes to breed. The bioswale is also located on the inside of the fence, so there's a 6-foot-high fence that would keep the children that might play in the cul-de-sac from even getting to the bioswale.
Can you show me where that fence is?
Yeah,
exactly?
sure. The line with the little squares in it is is a 6-foot-high fence.
Okay,
And
how close is that to the curb? Like
From the curb, it's probably about, from the curb to the fence is probably about 10, 12 feet.
Okay, I went outside today and measured 25 feet, was up to a nice tree that's been around for 100 years. You're planning to cut that?
Yes.
I see squirrels, I see
Not rats.
squirrels, and there's more bunny, deers. I see beautiful American eagles fly there. You
Well,
guys are
I
willing to take that down?
I don't believe there's an
American
American.
eagle eating a squirrel, and like these big hawks that stay there.
Is there a question?
So you're gonna cut those 200 or 100
Yes.
years old tree, and you're gonna make it, so 10 feet, that's pretty close to the curb.
It is, at the cul-de-sac it is.
And who's gonna take care of those 10 feet? You're gonna take care of those 10 feet,
Yes, that's part of our
cut the
property,
grass?
yes. That's part of our property.
And so that area is gonna be closed off, so usually we go cut through that area, go to the bus stop, that's gonna be closed off
Yes,
completely?
yes, it will be.
So usually some of us go to Bank of America, cut through, there's a little grass right there where it says Trans North. It says chain link, this area. Usually some of us walk and go to plazas and stuff, go to ShopRite, whatever it is, catch the bus, who work in New York, but they're planning to close it off completely.
Any other questions? Okay. This is my questions for now, but I do have a general question. So is this plan, well, I'm a little bit confused. Is this plan official, or is this a proposal going through reviewer? Well, this is the application before the planning board, and they're putting forth their evidence, then the planning board, then the board will either deny or approve the application.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
We normally stop at 10:30, we're there, but do you have any redirect before? Because I don't want to break that up.
No further
Holy
redirect.
cow.
Okay,
I didn't realize it
thank
was
you.
that late.
So we're going to finish for tonight. When are we going to come back?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant requested a special on Tuesday, October 17th.
Tuesday, October 17th?
Yes.
Okay, at 7:30?
Yeah, Chairman, can we just, give me just a moment? I just want
Sure.
to make sure we. Yes, that
Good.
works for everyone our side.
Okay, October 17th, 7:30. This is your notice. No further notice is required by the applicant. Anything else that needs to be said for the record? Oh, one other thing. Just to put it on the record, your environmental waiver was accepted during our conference meeting. So I just
Okay.
want to put that on the record as well.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.